I'm afraid I still have the same answer for you. There isn't any.
Von Ryan's Express stands as one of the most thrilling World War II films ever made. A masterpiece of tension and heroism that continues to captivate audiences decades after its release. But beneath its polished surface lies a web of production secrets, casting controversies, and behind-the-scenes dynamics that most viewers never caught. What if I told you that Frank Sinatra, the film's undeniable star, almost walked away from the production entirely? Or that the movie's most iconic scenes were achieved through near-catastrophic risks that would never be permitted on a modern film set? Let's pull back the curtain on this 1965 classic and examine what really happened when the cameras weren't rolling. The stories shared by cast members, production crew, and studio archives reveal a complex tapestry of creative battles, physical endurance, and artistic compromise. The revelations change everything you thought you knew about Von Ryan's Express, transforming how you'll experience this wartime thriller on your next viewing. At its core, Von Ryan's Express tells the story of Colonel Joseph Ryan, an American POW who leads a daring escape aboard a hijacked German train. But the real story, the one that unfolded behind the cameras, reveals a film that redefined action cinema while nearly destroying careers and lives in the process. The production represented a perfect storm of Hollywood power dynamics. Frank Sinatra, at the height of his cultural influence, 20th Century Fox desperate for a blockbuster, and a director with something to prove. What emerged from this volatile mix would alter the trajectory of war films for decades to come. Three elements separate Von Ryan's Express from other war epics of its era. First, its unflinching portrayal of Allied moral compromise. Second, its revolutionary approach to action sequences that prioritized realism over spectacle. And third, the extraordinary lengths to which its cast went to create authentic performances under grueling conditions. This film represents the moment Hollywood realized war movies could be both entertaining and morally complex, noted film historian Robert Osborne. It changed everything about how these stories were told. And yet most viewers never realized the price paid to achieve this new standard of realism, a price that began with a casting decision that shocked Hollywood insiders. Frank Sinatra wasn't just the star of Von Ryan's Express. He was, in many ways, its driving force. Yet the persona that Sinatra cultivated on screen, the cool, collected commander making impossible decisions under pressure, masked a far more complicated reality on set. In 1965, Sinatra commanded $400,000 per film, equivalent to roughly $3.5 million today, making him one of Hollywood's highest-paid actors, despite his reputation for unpredictable behavior. Frank was electric on camera, remembered co-star Trevor Howard. But when the director called cut, you never knew which Sinatra would emerge. Some days he was the most generous colleague you could imagine. Other days, he wouldn't speak to anyone but the director. This duality defined the production. While Sinatra's performance as Colonel Ryan demonstrated remarkable nuance, his behind-the-scenes demands created constant tension. He refused to do more than one take of many scenes, claiming his first instincts were always best. This one-take rule frustrated director Mark Robson and forced the entire production to operate at a frenetic pace. But beneath Sinatra's controlling exterior lay a vulnerability few witnessed. According to production assistants who worked closely with him, Sinatra was deeply concerned about his career trajectory. At 49, he felt Hollywood was changing, and younger actors like Steve McQueen were eclipsing his action star potential. Von Ryan represented something crucial for Frank, explained his longtime friend and co-star Edward Mulhare. It wasn't just another paycheck. It was his chance to prove he could carry a physically demanding action film at a time when the industry was moving toward younger stars. This insecurity drove Sinatra to push himself dangerously hard during filming, setting a standard that the rest of the cast felt obligated to follow, with nearly catastrophic consequences. The most consequential decision in the making of Von Ryan's Express wasn't made on location or in the editing room. It came in a tense casting session that nearly unraveled the entire project before filming began. Studio executives initially pushed for William Holden to play Colonel Ryan. Holden had proven box office appeal in war films like The Bridge on the River Kwai and Stalag 17. But director Mark Robson fought for a different vision, convinced that Sinatra's unpredictable energy would create the complex anti-hero he envisioned. Holden would have given us a traditional hero, Robson later admitted, but Sinatra gave us something more interesting, a flawed man forced into heroism by circumstance. This casting choice fundamentally altered the film's direction. Where Holden might have portrayed Ryan as a straightforward hero, Sinatra infused the character with moral ambiguity that challenged audience expectations. His Ryan was calculating, sometimes cold, and willing to sacrifice lives for the greater mission, a radical departure from war film protagonists of the era. But the film's most unexpected casting triumph came with British actor Trevor Howard as Major Eric Fincham. Howard's initial response to the script was a flat rejection. "I've done my share of war pictures," he told his agent. "I've no interest in playing another stiff upper-lip British officer." It took a personal call from Sinatra himself to change Howard's mind. According to production notes, Sinatra promised Howard that their character's antagonistic relationship would be the emotional core of the film, not just background to the action sequences. This creative guarantee, highly unusual for the time, convinced Howard to sign on. The chemistry between these two actors, who approached their craft from wildly different traditions, created the tension that drives the film's most memorable scenes. Yet few fans realize how close the production came to losing both its stars during the most ambitious sequences ever attempted in a war film. The most visually striking aspect of Von Ryan's Express isn't its star power or period detail. It's the breathtaking physical danger that permeates every frame. In an era before CGI, advanced safety protocols, or even basic stunt regulations, the production put its actors in situations that would be unthinkable on a modern film set. The production utilized actual vintage trains provided by the Italian State Railway, including a real German locomotive from the war era that required specialized engineers to operate safely. "We weren't just acting exhausted," recalled James Brolin, who played Private Ames. "We were exhausted. We were starved. We were terrified. What you see on screen isn't performance. It's documentation." The infamous sequence where escapees crawl along the outside of moving train cars was filmed without safety harnesses, with actors, including Sinatra, hanging precariously from a train traveling at over 30 miles per hour. When modern filmmakers watch these sequences, they're stunned by the raw danger visible in every frame. "You can see it in their eyes," noted Christopher Nolan, who studied the film while preparing for Dunkirk. "That's real fear. You can't fake that kind of physical reality." The toll on the cast was severe. Trevor Howard suffered a shoulder injury that would trouble him for years. Edward Mulhare endured a bout of pneumonia after spending days filming in water-filled tunnels. Sergio Fantoni collapsed from heat exhaustion during the grueling escape sequences. But it was Sinatra who pushed himself, and, by extension, the production, to the most dangerous extremes. Determined to perform his own stunts despite being significantly older than most of his co-stars, he refused body doubles for sequences that required him to leap between moving train cars, climb along the exterior of speeding locomotives, and engage in elaborate hand-to-hand combat. Frank was obsessed with authenticity, remembered assistant director Michael Burkett. There was no talking him out of it. If something looked dangerous, he wanted to do it himself, and that meant everyone else felt compelled to do the same. This commitment to physical authenticity came at a price that would remain hidden from audiences for decades, and culminated in a near disaster that almost ended the production entirely. For all the spectacular action sequences in Von Ryan's Express, the most remarkable moment in the film is one that most viewers completely miss. It occurs during the tense tunnel scene, where the escaping prisoners must hold their breath as their hijacked train passes through a smoke-filled passage. Watch the scene again with fresh eyes, and you'll notice something extraordinary: the physical transformation of the actors. Their faces aren't just showing performed tension, they're displaying actual oxygen deprivation. That scene wasn't entirely acted, confirmed John Layton, who played Captain Stein. Mark Robson wanted authentic reactions, so he had us hold our breath for the entire take. What you're seeing is actors actually struggling to breathe. Another easily overlooked detail occurs during the film's brutal opening sequence in the prison camp. When Sinatra's character is thrown into solitary confinement, the visible weight loss and pallor aren't makeup effects. They're the result of Sinatra's decision to partially starve himself for 10 days before filming those scenes. Medical records from the production reveal that Sinatra lost 17 pounds in less than 2 weeks to achieve the gaunt appearance of a malnourished prisoner, against the strong recommendations of the on-set physician. But perhaps the most subtle and powerful hidden detail involves the film's controversial ending. In the final sequence, Sinatra's Colonel Ryan is shot while enabling the train's escape, a surprising and abrupt conclusion that initially confused audiences expecting the traditional survival of the hero. What few viewers notice is the deliberate camera movement and staging in Ryan's final moments. Director Mark Robson positioned the camera to mirror almost exactly the composition used in From Here to Eternity, when Sinatra's character Maggio dies, creating a visual callback to the role that won Sinatra his Oscar and revitalized his film career. It was Frank's idea, Robson revealed years later. He said, "Let's bring it full circle." It was his way of acknowledging that this character represented a bookend to the role that had saved his career a decade earlier. This attention to micro-detail exemplifies why Von Ryan's Express transcends the typical war film, but it also hints at the behind-the-scenes conflicts that nearly derailed the entire production. While Von Ryan's Express depicted a daring escape from enemy territory, the real conflict occurred far from the cameras, in tension-filled production meetings, and heated exchanges between creative forces with dramatically different visions. At the center of this storm was the fundamental dispute over the film's ending. In David Westheimer's original novel, Colonel Ryan survives the escape. Early script drafts maintained this conclusion, giving audiences the satisfying resolution they would expect from a Hollywood war picture. But Sinatra, along with director Mark Robson, campaigned aggressively for the more shocking conclusion where Ryan is killed. Studio executives balked, concerned that killing the star would alienate audiences and damage box office potential. The suits wanted a traditional hero's journey, recalled screenwriter Wendell Mays. Sinatra wanted something more complex. He believed modern audiences would respond to a more challenging narrative. This disagreement escalated beyond creative differences into a full-scale power struggle. Studio documents reveal that 20th Century Fox executives threatened to replace director Mark Robson when he sided with Sinatra. Producer Saul David found himself caught between his star's creative demands and the studio's commercial concerns. The conflict wasn't limited to the film's conclusion. Throughout production, tensions flared over the depiction of military authority. Robson wanted to explore the moral ambiguity of wartime decision-making, while military advisors attached to the production pushed for more conventional portrayals of Allied heroism. There were days when Robson wouldn't speak to the technical advisors, remembered set decorator Raphael Breton. He felt they were trying to turn the film into propaganda rather than an honest exploration of war. Adding to these tensions was the logistical nightmare of filming on location in Italy. Local crews operated under different safety standards and work expectations than their American counterparts, creating constant friction. Language barriers complicated even basic communication, with multiple translators required for every technical discussion. The production also faced opposition from unexpected quarters. Italian railway officials, initially supportive of the project, became increasingly concerned about the dangerous stunts being performed on their vintage equipment. Several key sequences were nearly canceled when safety inspectors threatened to withdraw permission for use of the trains. In this atmosphere of constant conflict, a compromise emerged that would ultimately define the film's legacy and create an irony that none of the participants could have anticipated. The greatest irony of Von Ryan's Express lies in the disconnect between Sinatra's on-screen persona and his behind-the-scenes influence. While Colonel Ryan is portrayed as a man who sacrifices himself for the greater good, Sinatra, the producer and star, relentlessly pursued his own vision, sometimes at the expense of others. Frank would lecture us about commitment to the ensemble, recalled actor Wolfgang Price, who played Major von Clement. Then he'd turn around and demand that scenes be rewritten to feature him more prominently. This contradiction extended to the film's physical production. While insisting on realistic depictions of prisoner suffering, Sinatra himself stayed in luxury accommodations far from the main cast housing. While other actors endured grueling days in the hot Italian sun, Sinatra's contract specified limited working hours and mandatory breaks. Sinatra's personal contract for Von Ryan's Express included a clause guaranteeing that he would never work past 5:30 p.m. and never on weekends, restrictions that forced the entire production schedule to revolve around his availability. Perhaps the most revealing paradox emerged in the film's marketing. While Sinatra had fought passionately for the darker, more complex ending where his character dies, he later blamed this creative choice for the film's failure to match the box office success of The Great Escape, released 2 years earlier. Frank wanted it both ways. Director Mark Robson told film historian David Thompson years later. He wanted the artistic credibility of the downbeat ending, but also the commercial success of a more conventional war picture. When we didn't get both, he needed someone to blame. This tendency to shift responsibility created lasting friction with 20th Century Fox. Studio documentation reveals that Sinatra was briefly blacklisted from Fox Productions following Von Ryan's Express, with executives citing his unprofessional behavior and unreasonable demands as justifications. Yet for all these contradictions, something remarkable happened during the most physically demanding sequences. Sinatra underwent a transformation that even his harshest critics acknowledged as extraordinary. Despite all the behind-the-scenes conflict, Von Ryan's Express represented a creative breakthrough for Frank Sinatra that permanently altered his screen legacy. The film showcased dimensions of his acting ability that previous roles had only hinted at, and changed how audiences and critics perceived him as a dramatic performer. "This is Sinatra at his most committed," wrote influential critic Pauline Kael in her review. "He's shed the ring-a-ding artifice that often makes his performances seem like extensions of his nightclub persona." The breakthrough was most evident in the film's quieter moments. The scene where Ryan must decide which prisoners to leave behind displays a nuanced moral calculation rarely seen in war films of the era. Sinatra plays these moments with a restrained intensity that contrasts sharply with his more familiar performances. This critical recognition translated into unexpected commercial success. While Von Ryan's Express didn't match the blockbuster status of The Great Escape, it significantly outperformed studio expectations, particularly in international markets. In France and Italy, where more morally complex narratives were often embraced, the film achieved particular success. Von Ryan's Express earned over $17 million at the worldwide box office against a $5.5 million budget, making it one of the more profitable war films of the 1960s, despite its challenging ending. The film's success created new opportunities for realistic war pictures that didn't shy away from moral complexity or shocking conclusions. Studios that had previously demanded uplifting finales began considering alternatives that might generate similar critical acclaim and international interest. For the supporting cast, the film's success provided career-defining moments. James Brolin, in one of his earliest major roles, attracted significant attention from producers and directors. John Layton translated his performance into a series of similar roles in British war films. Edward Mulhare credited the film with revitalizing his career after a fallow period. Yet, the most profound impact was on audience perceptions of World War II itself. At a time when most Hollywood depictions still presented a sanitized view of the conflict, Von Ryan's Express dared to suggest that victory came at a terrible moral cost, and that even Allied forces faced impossible ethical choices. This willingness to engage with moral complexity created ripple effects that would transform the genre for decades to come. The influence of Von Ryan's Express extends far beyond its initial release, creating a template for war films that continues to resonate in modern cinema. Its fingerprints can be found on countless productions that followed, some obvious, others surprisingly subtle. Most immediately, the film's approach to action sequences set a new standard for physical authenticity. When director John Sturges began work on The Eagle Has Landed, 1976, he explicitly referenced Von Ryan's Express as the benchmark for realistic military operations. The emphasis on practical effects and real danger, rather than studio-bound simulations, became increasingly common in war pictures of the 1970s. Steven Spielberg, while preparing for Saving Private Ryan, studied the train tunnel sequence as a masterclass in creating sustained tension with minimal dialogue. What Robson achieved with just faces and breathing, that's pure cinema, Spielberg noted in a 1998 interview. We referenced that approach repeatedly during our beach landing planning. Beyond technical influence, the film's moral complexity rippled through subsequent war narratives. Colonel Ryan's willingness to sacrifice individual lives for the mission's success anticipated the ethical ambiguity that would become central to films like The Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now. The film's legacy extends to its physical production approaches as well. Location shooting in authentic European settings, rather than Hollywood backlot recreations, became increasingly common for World War II pictures. When Richard Attenborough began planning A Bridge Too Far, he specifically cited Von Ryan's Express as proof that complex military operations could be successfully filmed on location. For modern audiences, the film's most relevant aspect may be its exploration of prisoner psychology. The complex dynamics between captives, the moral compromises, unlikely alliances, and ethical calculations presaged modern narratives from The Walking Dead to Orange is the New Black that explore how confinement transforms human relationships. What makes Von Ryan's Express still feel modern is its psychological accuracy, observed prison psychologist Dr. Elizabeth Farrell. The ways the prisoners form hierarchies, negotiate with authority, and balance individual survival against group welfare, that's precisely what we observe in real confinement situations. Even the film's controversial ending found new relevance in contemporary cinema, where audience expectations about protagonist survival have evolved. When Christopher Nolan allowed key characters to die in Dunkirk, he was building on ground that Von Ryan's Express had broken decades earlier. But perhaps the most surprising legacy is how the film transformed Hollywood's understanding of Frank Sinatra himself. What most viewers never fully appreciated about Von Ryan's Express is how it fundamentally reframed Frank Sinatra's relationship with cinema. This wasn't merely another entry in his filmography. It represented a deliberate attempt to transcend the limitations of his established screen persona and prove his relevance to a changing Hollywood. The film captured Sinatra at a pivotal moment in his career, straddling two eras of American culture. Behind him lay the smooth, untouchable cool of the Rat Pack years. Ahead, a rapidly evolving film industry, increasingly focused on moral ambiguity and psychological realism. Von Ryan's Express represented his attempt to bridge these worlds. Frank never got enough credit for his willingness to evolve as an actor, reflected director Mark Robson years later. Everyone focuses on his difficult behavior, but few acknowledge his courage in taking roles that challenged audience perceptions. This courage is most evident in the film's final moments. By allowing Colonel Ryan to die, an ending he personally championed, Sinatra willingly sacrificed the invincibility that had been central to his screen image. It was a creative risk few stars of his stature would have taken, especially at a time when his box office appeal was already in question. The film also represents something more universally human: the tension between how we present ourselves and who we truly are. Just as Colonel Ryan maintains a facade of cold-hearted pragmatism while harboring deeper compassion, Sinatra himself navigated the gulf between his carefully constructed public image and his more complex private self. Von Ryan's Express endures because it captures this authenticity beneath artifice, in both its story and its creation. It reminds us that heroism isn't about perfection, but about action in the face of impossible choices. It suggests that redemption can come through sacrifice rather than survival. When viewed through this lens, the film transcends its genre trappings to become something more profound. A meditation on how our public and private selves intersect in moments of crisis, and how our greatest contributions may come when we're willing to sacrifice our carefully constructed images. This deeper understanding transforms how we experience Von Ryan's Express, revealing layers of meaning that most fans have missed for decades. Von Ryan's Express continues to captivate viewers, not despite its complexities, but because of them. Its blend of spectacular action, moral ambiguity, and psychological depth rewards repeated viewing with fresh insights each time. The next time you watch, Observe the subtle details in Sinatra's performance, the moments of hesitation, the flashes of doubt beneath the command presence. And you'll discover a film far richer than its reputation suggests. If you found these revelations as fascinating as we did, hit like and share your own thoughts about Von Ryan's Express in the comments below. Which of these behind-the-scenes details surprised you most? And which other classic films deserve this kind of deep-dive exploration?